So today I want to talk a little bit about the idea of listening to the market. And I made some notes that I want to share to you. And this is something that I've been talking about actually for a very long time. And without being kind of vague about it, without getting too specific about it. And so more and more, the more I talk about it lately, people are asking me, well, what do you mean listen to the market? And how exactly do you listen to the market? And so that's me actually listening to the market when I get asked that question to say, all right, it's time to turn that into content. So that's your first tip, right? When someone says, what do you mean by that? What are you talking about as it relates to your business? Of course, that is content. So I am turning this idea of listening to the market into a bunch of content. And even this video is going to be part of that content, of course. So I thought I would break it down. That's actually very often my process. I'll take an idea, and then little by little, I just keep deepening it, keep adding to it, keep improving it. And I want to point to that actually also as a way to create content, because I find that often people take an idea and then they do it and then they put it out there and then they move on to the next idea. And you can do that, but it's kind of a waste of an idea. So I want you to always be thinking about ways that you can add and update and improve and deepen your content ideas and change them and add different examples, because that way you'll get more mileage with them. So that's what I'm doing with this idea of listening to the market. And the way I used to talk about it actually was I used to say that everything flows from the market. And I still think about it that way, but I think it's easier to think about it in terms of listening to the market, because that's something you can do. And I do submit to you that if you listen to the market, what you don't have to do as a result is rack your brain. And that's what I find people doing most of the time, is racking your brain for what am I going to talk about? How am I going to say it? What's the best way to say it? And this idea basically means that you can stop racking your brain and instead open your ears, gear your attention outward is another way that I think about it, and listen to what the market is telling you. And usually the market is smarter than you are. I have always found that the market is smarter than I am if I am willing to listen to it. But the trick is that it requires interaction. You can't be hiding behind anything. It really does require that you interact. Listening requires interaction. So I've broken it down into 3 different types of listening. One is listening for a niche or for your niche, or more than one, because I do like to sometimes put them in the plural. The second one is listening for your marketing content, which is different from your content marketing. So your marketing content is the language you use to describe what you do and for whom and how you do it. That is your marketing content. It's what's on your website, for example, but not on your blog. Your blog, if you have one, or your LinkedIn profile, the articles that you publish to your LinkedIn profile, is your content marketing. And so that's the third piece. How do you listen for content for your content marketing? And just as a reminder, content marketing is one of the 3 marketing tools in the Simplest Marketing Plan. The other 2 are targeted outreach and strategic networking. And actually, more and more people are little by little going back out into the world. It's true. At the moment, it's happening. I'm getting stories of people doing strategic networking in person and in real time. So that's a choice, obviously. But coming back to the first one, so listening for the niche, or the niche, as it were. And, the story that I always tell about myself is, my niche, as y'all know, because you're in it, is creative professionals, people marketing what I consider to be, or what you consider to be, creative services. But I didn't come up with that myself. I listened to the market. I looked around, 33 plus years ago now, at all the people I knew who were creative people, and they were very disorganized, and they weren't promoting themselves. And I saw the need. And so I just tried to offer my help. That's actually something I said recently that someone kind of quoted. So I'll say it again. Self-promotion is not about pitching your ideas or yourself to anyone. It's about offering to help the people who need your help. And if you just reframe it in your mind that way, it might be a little bit easier to do. So that's what I did kind of naturally, kind of unconsciously at the very beginning. I just looked around. What do the people I know seem to need, and what would they be willing to pay for it? At the time, it was, I think, $15 an hour I was charging. It's a little bit more now. But that is how my market found me, basically. And I really think if you listen to the market, your niche, your market will find you. It might take time, but it's more organic that way. And it works better that way than you trying to force yourself onto a particular market. So just be listening for what market is out there that I have access to that needs my help, and then be offering your help to them. Another version of this, I'll use Holly Morris, who is a copywriter, who some of you may know, as another example. She is and was positioning herself as a copywriter for travel and tourism. And then when the pandemic hit, that wasn't working so well, but a subset of that market actually started finding her, and that was the vacation rental area of the travel and tourism world. And so she just started to get a couple clients, a couple referrals, and helping them and serving their needs. But it didn't quite occur to her until I pointed it out that that is the market speaking to her, and that she should listen to it and say, all right, that's my niche now. That's where I'm going to focus. That's who I'm going to speak to. Those are the needs I'm going to speak to. And those are the people I'm going to go looking for, right? So again, it could be right in front of you and you may not just see it quite yet. So that's listening for a niche. And if, for example, you have an example for yourself of how you have listened for a niche, please put it in the chat. I would love to see that when I read them later. And I'm sure other people would love to see that too. So feel free to do that. All right, number 2 is listening for your marketing content. And again, this can be confusing, but your marketing content is the language that you use to describe what you do and for whom and how you help them. And so again, that's the language on your website, on your LinkedIn profile, in your about section, even in your title. That is all your marketing content. And actually, I want to point to Chris Haviland, who is with us today. Chris is a copywriter and a scientist. And we were talking about this in one of the small groups earlier in the week, that someone reached out to her and said, we are short on resources. And I pointed to that as a piece of language, as a phrase that is her market speaking to her. And she should basically regurgitate that language back to the market, to that person who asked for that kind of help, and thinking that's their jargon. That's the language they use. That's how you want to connect with them. And that's what will resonate with them. So always be listening for not what do they think I do, but what language do they use to describe their needs of what I do and how I can help them. We had another example actually from Danielle Hughes, who I don't think is here today, but also in another small coaching group, where she is positioning herself as a speaker and wants to get paid speaking engagements. But someone said to her, then you should call yourself a trainer and a workshop facilitator, because that's the language they use, the people who are paying the money, and they're the ones who have the money. So you use their language. I also like to use the strategy of when you say your elevator pitch, whether it's on the phone to someone or in a real live strategic networking environment, you can say something relatively general, like I do. I help creative professionals get better clients with bigger budgets. And then you shut up, stop talking, tolerate what may be an awkward silence and let the other person use their imagination and fill the vacuum of the vagueness that you left with their need and their language, which is you, again, listening to the market, and they will tell you exactly what they need. I actually noticed this very early on. I would just say, I help artists get organized. And someone would say, oh, does that mean you will go through our piles of papers with us? I'm like, yes, that's exactly what that means, right? So let them fill in the gaps and tell you what they're looking for. That's a way to listen to the market. And then I also like to use an example from another client who I won't name names this time, but when you get a no, when you get rejected, when the proposal you submitted does not win, the best thing to do always is to ask, not why didn't you choose me, of course, but who did you choose? What decision did you make? And why did you make that decision? And so this particular client did that. And you won't always get a response, but you certainly won't get one if you don't ask. And when she did this, she got some information that was more important than the value of the project would have been to her, right? There is a tremendous amount of value in the feedback. And the feedback was because this other company that we chose said they were going to do this, this, and this. And they were specific with the actual language. This was in an email message. And the thing that was so interesting was that this client of mine, she did offer this, this, and this. She just didn't say it the way they recognized it. And so she basically took that language and integrated it into her next proposal and her future proposals. All right. So don't be discouraged or disappointed when you don't get something, or try to minimize it. Do the 5-minute pity party, as we like to say, as Deidre Rienzo likes to call it. And then reframe it and think about, how am I going to use this information to improve and get this kind of client or this client next time? All right. And now, number 3, listening for content marketing or content ideas. And I used, I think in my message that I sent out earlier in the week, my first book as an example of, again, me not really even knowing I was listening to the market or that was the best thing to do. But I did, actually what happened was, I said to my therapist one day, why aren't they asking me to write a book? They being this publishing company that I had a relationship with. Why haven't they asked me to write a book? And she said, have you asked them? And I was like, no. So I did. And they said, well, that's a really good idea. Here's who you need to talk to. And when I talked to that person, she said, we've done market research, and the book they want it was called at the time, Self-Promotion Online. This was the year 2000. And I was like, well, I know a little bit about self-promotion. I don't know anything about online, but I can learn it. And how big could it be, right? How important could the online part be? Little did we know. But that was the book I wrote. I'm a little afraid, actually, at this point to go back and read it. And I know some people here actually have it. I do have a copy. It's way out of date, of course, but at the time, it was what it needed to be. And so that was an example of me listening to the market for my topic. I don't even need to have the topic. And maybe you don't either when it comes to articles or books or anything like that. And the other example that I've been using this week is some of you who were with us last month for the September office hours, I think, just one short month ago. Conrad Winter presented the first 10 minutes of a presentation that he gave on Tuesday, this past Tuesday in Nashville at a conference. And it went really well, apparently. And I was talking to him about it this morning, actually. And they loved it. And they thought it was very practical. And the topic also was not his idea. It was given to him. And at first he didn't like it and didn't think he would be able to do it. But he did, and he did it really well. But basically, the topic was, writing killer content in an hour or less. That's what they asked him for. And now, actually, every time I mention it, someone says, can I see that? That sounds really interesting. So again, That's listening to the market. When you hear a good idea, oh, maybe I could use that idea.